There was a soul. Had music inside. They called her the Unknown.
For a long time now, arguably since the early days, gaming and metal music have been intrinsically intertwined. From the amazing soundtracks that have blessed us over the years, I'm looking at Mick Gordon's work on Doom here, to the iconic and powerful tributes like Brutal Legend.
What is that sound?
It's a devil screaming. It's an angel singing. It is the pounding of creation's hammer upon the anvil of time.
It's fucking awesome.
It's called heavy metal, and it's the real reason you should bang your heads.
Gaming has actually involved and contributed to metal at large, and actually holds a lot of responsibility in pushing the genre forward. Very rarely do we get true, honest-to-God homages to metal as we did in Tim Schafer's masterpiece Brutal Legend. However, our wait for another video game that fully celebrates our most beloved genre of music has finally come along. Behold, Metal Hellsinger, an extreme and engaging game that comes along nary a generation. Released just recently on the 15th of September 2022, the game went directly to Xbox Game Pass and remains one of the best games offered on the service. Seriously, this FPS rhythm shooter is unbelievable, from the art to the mechanics, and of course, you can't forget the music. During development, there was some buzz that the developer, The Outsiders, was bringing in powerhouse talent from the metal world. All of this news culminated in the announcement that even Serge Tankian had worked on the soundtrack. Of course, once I heard this, me and countless others were pumped for this game, and let me tell you, when I got my hands on the masterpiece, I was blown away. So without further ado, let's get into the gem, this absolute metal magnum opus. At a quick glance, the game clearly takes a lot of inspiration from the Doom reboot. However, The Outsiders have done enough with Metal Hellsinger to carve itself a unique spot in the FPS and rhythm shooter genres, and establish itself as a metal powerhouse in gaming, for reasons dissimilar to the aforementioned series. The focus on being a cohesive rhythm shooter allows Hellsinger to not only be one of the best, if not the best game in the genre, but also draw in a whole new type of audience to that genre. Rhythm games aren't exactly new, but the subgenre of FPS rhythm games is still in its infancy. There are of course games like BPM, Bullets Per Minute, which came out in 2020, in fact, exactly 2 years before Metal Hellsinger on the 15th of September. Anyways, the FPS rhythm game is still experiencing somewhat of a renaissance, as the greater genre had experienced long ago with games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Finally, all those Call of Duty gun covers have a whole new meaning after playing these games. Metal Hellsinger does so much to institute itself as the king of the FPS rhythm shooter subgenre, and brings with it a whole slew of extra goodies to really seal the deal in proving itself worthy of such a status. The added focus of metal music really aids in resonating with an audience that I would obviously include myself in. The metal community has been dying for a game like this for years now, and of course, The Outsiders has come to deliver. Let's get to the gameplay. Let's get it out of the way because of course it's the shining factor that makes this game so incredible. First of all, as I mentioned, the similarities to Doom are obvious, and the developers wear these inspirations on their sleeves. Hellsinger builds off of everything that made Doom so amazing in the first place, and adapts the gameplay to the rhythm shooter environment, which honestly is such an amazing space for this kind of experience. With that slamming soundtrack, the gameplay is just over the top addictive. Upon your first playthrough's completion, you'll find yourself wanting more and more, chasing that white dragon. And thankfully, this kind of gameplay based on levels on the shorter side is perfect and lends itself well to playing in short bursts or casual play, and it will deliver every time. Going into more detail with the gameplay, players will find themselves taking control of the Unknown, an elite demon from Hell who has her voice stolen by none other than the devil, her/himself, who is known as the Red Judge in this narrative. Unknown subsequently sets out on a quest to retrieve her stolen voice with her closest friend, an angel skull-made weapon. Of course, the Unknown has lost her voice, so the game is narrated by Paz, that specific angel skull, who is played by another familiar face in the video game industry, and that is Troy Baker, the voice of Joel from The Last of Us. The story is set up to be one hell of a metal adventure, pun intended, and while it doesn't explore much territory through its narrative, it's the other aspects of gameplay that really bring justice to this title. The game unfolds through a series of levels as the Unknown traverses the Hellscapes, defeating its legions of demons as she lurks ever closer to recovering her stolen voice. On your first playthrough, each level presents the player with a new weapon to use against the battalions of hell. The introduction is also fantastic. It's quick, easy, and explains all you need to know, all the while pumping the player up with some tunes that only foreshadow the breathtaking experience yet to come. The beginning also introduces gamers to Paz, the skull of a fallen angel, who Unknown uses as a weapon to aid her in her quest. Players will become quite acquainted with Paz, as he is technically the primary weapon, because he is the only weapon that will allow you to maintain a multiplier without striking an enemy. Speaking of which, oh yeah, there's a multiplier. Obviously, the rhythm shooter territory, the arcade mechanics are intrinsic to the genre, and they're ever present in Metal Hellsinger. The multiplier will build to 16 times as the player lands hits, granting points for each hit timed properly to the beat of the music. As this multiplier creeps closer to that 16x, the music builds with intensity, adding various layers to the soundtrack. Once you top off the multiplier, the vocals will finally kick in, adding to the intensity of the already bombastic gameplay. This momentum is maintained throughout the game, and unless you totally suck, you'll find that everything revolves around this fast-paced sense of momentum and pushing forward. The time signatures of the music also seem to ramp up, making the game more and more fast-paced as you blow through the various hellscapes. Furthermore, due to this kind of engaging and arcade-style gameplay, you'll find yourself physically timekeeping, like headbanging or stomping to maintain that pace and make sure that your shots are perfect every single time. Like any war, and especially a war against hell itself, there are a number of different implements at the player's disposal. While they'll have to complete most of the levels to unlock all of them, they all provide a satisfying approach to butchery. First of all, we all know Paz by now, and perhaps even know about the sword the Unknown is equipped with. Both of these weapons act as the main methods of killing. However, you can equip 2 more weapons to bring with you into each mission. These are, in order of attainment, the shotgun named Persephone, the hounds, which are 2 deadly pistols, the notorious Vulcan, the explosive heavy crossbow, and finally Hellcrow, the dual boomerang weapons. Without a doubt, my favorite are the Hellcrow. They're just unbelievably satisfying as they fly and tear through the demons left and right. Each weapon has its own satisfying features in and of itself, but I truly love the Hellcrow. Each weapon has stats, but they won't mean much really. What I found most important was the ability for each weapon to maintain a good enough pace towards the music. Also, some weapons are definitely easier to correct when you lose the beat other than some of the other ones. It basically correlates to the faster the weapon, the easier it is to maintain that sweet multiplier. So it's not that the shotgun and crossbow suck, it's just that I found their use case is limited by the fact that most of the music and its sections are fast-paced, which the fire rate has a hard time keeping up with. All in all though, the weapons are incredibly well done, and each one will have you wearing a shit-eating grin as you mow down the Red Judge's minions. All of the guns also have an active reload mechanic like good old Gears of War. If you time your reload perfect to the golden beat, you'll not only reload faster, but increase your score and maintain that succulent 16x. Another simple mechanic of the game that just works so well is the enemy types. Each level will not only introduce a new weapon to the gameplay, but also add a new enemy type for players to contend with. Every type of enemy looks and works to fit their part in the gameplay. There's enough variety in the enemies too, especially due to the length of the game, that they never overstay their welcome. Some enemies will also present different kinds of approaches to the player in order to take them down. perfect examples that stand out are that stupidly annoying overgrown fly that barfs acid all over the place, or the angels that hover above raining laser beams and explosions down on the unknown. This perfect variety of enemies helps that game in being more engaging as it is, and also despite being another Doom clone to some degree, the enemies feel fresh and like they totally belong in Hellsinger. Perhaps I should have led with this point, and I did to some degree, but like any rhythm shooter, this game is inevitably linked to its music. Despite the mechanics being so crisp, reactive, engaging, and frankly fun, the main focal point of this game is definitely the soundtrack. To sum it all up in a few words, it's basically a metalhead's wet dream. First of all, as you're likely aware by this point, most tracks feature a famous and talented metal vocalist from various bands in the scene. The talent that worked on the tracks also definitely leaned toward the more extreme side of metal like death metal and metalcore. But before I go into more on these wicked singers, let's just get one more thing out of the way, which needs to be mentioned. The entire soundtrack was composed by Two Feathers Studio, a duo that specializes in composing music for video games. They have a pretty decent library of work, but honestly, I think this is some of their best music by far. They deserve a huge amount of respect for their work on Metal Hellsinger, as it is their music that really establishes this game as a metal masterpiece. The gameplay is truly amazing and all, but without metal music, it wouldn't be the same, nor have the same status within the genre. Now, the soundtrack features some real heavy metal hitters, so get ready for some big names. I'll list them off in order of appearance on the album. First, there's Michael Stan of Dark Tranquillity, who features on most of the tracks throughout the album. Then there's Alyssa White Glues, the frontwoman of Arch Enemy, and formerly the Agonist, followed by Tatiana Schmalek from Ginger, and Trivium's Matt Heafy, and there's still more to come. James Dorton of Black Crown Initiate, Bjorn Speed Strid from Soilwork, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God fame, Dennis Lixon of Refused an Invasion, and finally, to top it all off, the cherry on top is System of a Down's Serj Tankian. The lineup is just unreal, and with Two Feathers compositions to support them, the various performances are fucking great. The mix on these songs is also incredibly well done, and because the vocals are so good, it's just that cherry on top when you top off your multiplier and they kick in. You'll find yourself wanting to listen to these tracks outside of the game, as they're quite catchy. I find myself still singing like Speed in the track Dissolution. It's just perfect for some reason. Also, the song comes in at a pivotal part in the game, where everything in the narrative and gameplay fully coalesce for the ultimate experience. And with this song blasting in the background, slaughtering demons has never been so fun. If this were any other game, this would be the final boss soundtrack, but no, not Metal Hellsinger. It still has more to come with Randy Blythe and Serj Tankian following. Anyway, there is one single problem with the soundtrack, and that is it's still not available on Spotify. The only place you can officially get it, kinda, is YouTube. Maybe this will change in the near future, but if not, we all have our ways, don't we? Either way, the album is an absolute masterclass in metal and seriously deserves to go down in the annals of not only metal music, but gaming as well. I wasn't even aware of this game before I saw it pop up on Game Pass. When I first saw it, noticing its title starts with metal, I knew I had to at least give it a Google search. When I saw a couple of the big names, namely White Glues, Matt Heafy, and Randy Blythe, I knew I had to check out the game further. Needless to say, I was pretty hyped and waited with hot anticipation as the game installed. Thankfully, it's like 13 gigs, so it wasn't long before I got to dive into the metal madness. I was hooked immediately. The introduction was perfect, and I found the story to be pretty cool. Even though it could be shallow, the narrative is still creative and can help drive the gameplay forward. It's nothing special, but it still fits perfectly within the game. I got right into the music from the first track, and the mechanics felt like pure butter. I couldn't get enough, and if I didn't have to work the next day, I would have beat it in one sitting. Instead, I took two. Even after beating the game, I've gone on romps through levels just for fun and to relieve stress. There's something about this game that's cathartic and inspiring. I honestly believe that Metal Hellsinger is one of the best quote-unquote metal games out there. I mean, it's in the title for God's sake. It's gotta be good as fuck. From the story to the gameplay, and most importantly, the music, the game truly fires all cylinders and delivers a lethal dose of a top-tier heavy metal experience. Everything about this game bleeds metal. In my mind, this game sits right up there with Brutal Legend, contending for the best digital metalhead fever dream ever. It's an absolute blast and frankly, a metal masterpiece. As always, thank you so much for watching. What did you think of Metal Hellsinger? What is your favorite track? Of course, let me know in the comments section and I'll catch you next time. Take care.